All right, so our first week of online learning is about to come to an end. You have a story that you should be reading. You should have started yesterday. You'll continue today. You should read it over the weekend. And we're going to finish up on Monday when we meet together as a class in the Zoom meeting at 9 a.m. So I wanted to go over a couple of things. There were some questions in the Google Classroom today about what exactly you're supposed to be reading. Something like, oh my God, it's so much. So it is a 28-page PDF, which might seem kind of long for a short story to you, but the story itself doesn't actually start till page 7, and it finishes on page 24. So it's only about 17 pages, and there are a lot of pictures. I mean, it's a oddly formatted story, so it's not really 17 pages long. If I had to guess, it's probably more like 13 or 14. So, you're cutting a couple of pages down there. It's about half of this PDF is actually story. So, again, you should be reading from about page 7 to about page 24. That's the entire story of Rip Van Winkle without the introduction and without the postscript that you don't really need to read for our purposes. So you have a couple of outline points that you're going to have to make in your story. Come into the Zoom chat on Friday or today, sorry, and I will go over those with you if you need help. On Monday, we'll do a whole class about them, and you'll be able to finish answering the questions. A couple of points about the very beginning of the story. It starts off right away with an example of what I was telling you yesterday about how Washington Irving is using American landmarks really to tell his story and to make it more American, to kind of co-opt some things from the European tradition, but put a distinctly American stamp on them. So right in the first sentence he says, whoever has made a voyage up the Hudson must remember the Catskill Mountains. We're talking about the Hudson River. You guys have all seen that if you go over by New York. And then the Catskill Mountains are a little further up, but they're a pretty prominent mountain range in New York. A lot of people go up to the Catskills on the weekend and do hiking and things like that. Not me, but a lot of people. So using these geographical features, much like Philip Freneau would have, Washington Irving puts an American spin on a story right away. In the second page, because that whole first page is really set up, we get a line here that says, at the foot of these fairy mountains. This fairy mountains. It's not really a way we would describe the mountains, but what he's doing is he's kind of giving it a mystic or a supernatural feel right away. There's something special about these mountains. They're just not piles of dirt and rock. There's something mystical and magical about them. He points out Dutch colonists. Note that he's not saying British colonists. He goes, the Dutch colonists, of course, found in New York. New York City was called New Amsterdam at one point. And we're kind of moving through some things before we get to a little bit of a mention of Great Britain. So in that same village, in one of these very houses, which tell the precise truth, was sadly time-worn and weather-beaten, there lived many years since, while the country was yet a province of Great Britain, a simple, good-natured fellow of the name of Rip Van Winkle. So they're telling us that we're looking back, obviously, the story's being told in the future, that at the beginning of the story, Rip Van Winkle lived in this house, and Great Britain was still in charge. So we are clearly pre-Revolutionary War, or even at the beginning of the Revolutionary War, but most likely pre-Revolutionary War. And then it connects him back to a long line of Van Winkles that go all the way back to Peter Stuyvesant and the Dutch settling New York. So right here at the very beginning, we have mentions of the American geography. We have, connections to American history that are not exclusively British. And then, of course, we do have that mention of Great Britain, but within that mention of Great Britain, we're talking about the fact that we are not part of Great Britain anymore. So that's just a little bit of a setup to get you going. If you can recognize those things that I just mentioned, you'll be able to recognize the other things that we're looking for. And I will be in the group meeting on Zoom for the entire class period today. If you have any questions or you need any help. And on Monday, we'll be meeting at 9 a.m. Look forward to talking to you then. Have a nice weekend.